My name is Clara Bennett, and I was 28 when a neighbor called to tell me my grandmother had died. My parents had known for 9 hours. They simply decided I didn't need to know. 10 years earlier, 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, they had placed 2 suitcases outside their house, changed the locks, and told me I had made my choice. Now they sat in the front pew at my grandmother's funeral, pretending we were still a family. My mother squeezed my hand. "We should talk about the estate, sweetheart." As a family, I almost laughed. They weren't grieving. They were waiting for money. My grandmother, Evelyn Bennett, had died peacefully in her sleep. When I arrived at her house, I found an index card taped to the door in my mother's handwriting. "Contents inventoried. Please do not remove items." My grandmother had been dead less than a day, and my parents had already started cataloging her possessions. Standing on that porch brought back everything. Growing up, my mother treated our home like a bank. Every birthday present became a debt. Every meal, coat, or favor was eventually mentioned again. My grandmother's house was different. At her kitchen table, I was never a debtor. Once, when I asked what I owed her for driving me somewhere, she laughed. "You don't owe me anything, Clara. You never will." I didn't understand it then, but I lived between 2 worlds. One where love came with invoices, and another where love was simply love. Then, when I was 17, Grandma suffered a minor stroke. My mother immediately arrived at the hospital, carrying brochures for a senior living facility and a real estate valuation of Grandma's house. She called it planning. Grandma called it what it was. No, but my mother didn't stop. One night, I overheard my parents discussing guardianship, power of attorney, and how they could manage Grandma's finances. My stomach dropped. They wanted a court to declare her incompetent so they could control her money and sell her house. 3 weeks later, my mother filed the petition. A court investigator came to Grandma's home. She watched my grandmother make coffee, pay bills, identify the date, and discuss grocery prices with perfect clarity. Then she questioned me privately. I told her everything. I showed her the notebook where I'd recorded Grandma's therapy appointments. Her doctor supported me. The petition was denied. Grandma kept her house. My mother never forgave me. 2 months later, I came home from work and discovered my key no longer worked. 2 suitcases waited on the porch. My mother opened the door. "You're 18 now," she said coldly. "You made your choice." Then she closed the door. I stood outside in the darkness, holding my bags, and I walked 6 streets to Grandma's house. She opened the door without asking questions. She simply turned on the porch light. "Love doesn't keep books, honey," she whispered. "It keeps a light on." From that night forward, that light burned every evening. I didn't know then that 10 years later, that same light would lead me straight into the biggest fight of my life. 6 days after Evelyn's funeral, an envelope arrived from her attorney, Margaret Hale. Inside was a formal invitation to the reading of the estate plan. My parents received identical copies. My mother called me within 20 minutes. "We'll pick you up," she said warmly. "We should arrive together." "I'll drive myself." Silence. Then she laughed softly. "Of course you will." Margaret's office was small, old-fashioned, and completely silent when we entered. My parents sat across from me. My father kept his hands folded. My mother carried a leather folder on her lap. Margaret opened a thick document. The Evelyn Bennett Revocable Trust. My mother straightened. Margaret began listing the assets. The family home, $480,000, the commercial property downtown, $620,000, investment accounts, nearly $2,300,000, a life insurance policy, several smaller accounts. The total was approximately $3.5 million. My mother's expression barely changed. Then Margaret read the beneficiaries: a small gift to my father, $10,000, $10,000 to my mother, and everything else to me. My mother blinked. My father stared at Margaret. I couldn't breathe, Margaret continued. The residence is to remain Clara Bennett's primary home for as long as she wishes. The investment assets are to be placed under the management of an independent trustee until Clara reaches the age of 30. My mother finally spoke. This can't be right. Margaret looked at her over her glasses. It is. But Evelyn wasn't thinking clearly near the end. She was evaluated by 2 independent physicians. My mother opened her leather folder. We have concerns. Margaret closed the trust. Then I suggest you speak with counsel. We left without another word. 3 days later, my parents filed a legal challenge. Their petition accused me of manipulating Evelyn. They claimed I had isolated her. They questioned her mental capacity. They claimed I had influenced her into changing an estate plan that supposedly should have favored her only child. Then came the sentence that made my hands shake. They asked the court to appoint them temporary managers of the estate. They wanted control of the house, the accounts. Everything. Margaret called me that evening. They have every legal right to file, she said. But your grandmother anticipated this. What do you mean? She left instructions specifically for a challenge. The next morning, Margaret handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a statement written by Evelyn. My grandmother had known my parents might come after the inheritance. She had known they might accuse me. And she had prepared for it. The final page contained one sentence. If they challenge this trust, read this statement in court. My hands trembled as I turned the page. Then I saw the date January 2024, months before Evelyn's death, months before my parents made their move. She had predicted them. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just an inheritance plan. It was a trap designed to protect me from the people who had spent 10 years keep score. I just didn't know how powerful that trap was yet. The preliminary hearing took place in October inside the old county courthouse. Judge Helen Warren presided. My parents sat at the petitioner's table beside their attorney, Victor Shaw. My mother looked calm, almost pleased. She kept scanning the courtroom as though she had already won. Then Judge Warren opened the trust. Counsel, she said, has your client read Article 9? Victor hesitated. The judge continued. If any beneficiary contests the validity of this trust or seeks control of its assets through legal proceedings, that beneficiary forfeits any and all interest granted herein. My mother's face remained still. Then the judge read the conditional gifts: $10,000 to my mother, $10,000 to my father. They would receive those gifts only if they accepted the trust. My mother's smile disappeared. But Judge Warren wasn't finished. There is an attached statement of intent, notarized in January of 2024. The testator requests that it be read aloud in open court if this trust is challenged. She began reading. Evelyn had written that my parents had previously tried to have her declared incompetent so they could control her affairs. She wrote that she had spent 10 years making sure the answer remained no. Then came the final line. If they are in your courtroom now, they have come after my death, smiling, offering to manage what I left behind. I ask you to read this page to them so they understand that I am one final time ahead of them. The courtroom became completely silent. My mother stared straight ahead. Victor requested an evidentiary hearing. Arguing that I had exercised undue influence, Judge Warren granted it. 6 weeks later, the hearing began. But before that, my father came to my house alone. He stood beneath the porch light, holding his car keys. "You need to understand your mother," he said. Then he told me something I'd never known. My mother's own mother had died when she was 23. There had been no inheritance, only unpaid bills, collection notices, and a funeral nobody could afford. My mother had worked 3 jobs to pay everything. She believes money left uncontrolled is dangerous, Dad whispered. She thinks whoever controls it first is protecting the family. I looked at him. "And you?" He lowered his eyes. "Just give her something, Clara. Then she'll stop. Not an apology, not regret, a payment plan." 3 days later, my mother sent me 4 handwritten pages. She offered reconciliation. Sunday dinners, Christmas together. My room back, all she wanted was for the estate to be managed properly by everyone. I read the letter 10 times. For one terrible night, I almost believed it. Then the formal settlement arrived. $700,000. In exchange, I would withdraw the challenge. Buried inside was another threat. If I refused, they would pursue my professional license and expose my old medical records. My savings were nearly gone. My lawyer told me accepting was rational. I picked up the pen. Then someone knocked. It was my grandmother's neighbors, Ruth Harper and Carmen Lewis. Ruth placed her hand on the settlement papers. "Your grandmother left you more than money," she said. "She left you witnesses." I looked at the signature line. Ruth asked quietly, "How much have you already paid for their love?" I knew the answer, everything. I tore the agreement in half, and, for the first time, I stopped being afraid of their story. I decided to tell mine. The next morning, I went to Margaret's office and gave her my decision. No settlement, no counteroffer, no delay. Then I signed a release allowing my old medical records into evidence voluntarily. Victor had planned to use those records against me. Now he couldn't threaten me with something I'd already chosen to reveal. We built our witness list: Dr. Arjun Patel, who had treated Evelyn for 20 years, Donna Brooks, her hospice nurse, and Ruth and Carmen, the neighbors who had watched that porch light burn for years. The evidentiary hearing opened in November. Victor went first. He was good. He painted me as a vulnerable medical professional who had become deeply involved in an elderly woman's life while standing to inherit millions. My mother testified next. She wore a blue suit and held a tissue. "We only wanted to protect my mother," she said. "Clara has always been fragile." She made herself sound reasonable. Then it was my turn. I took the stand wearing a gray dress. I told the court everything. I described being abandoned at 18, the locked door, the 2 suitcases, the walk to Evelyn's house. Then I told them about the night. At 19, when my mental health collapsed, I had driven myself to the hospital. I checked myself in. I stayed 72 hours. I checked myself out. Then I finished nursing school and spent years caring for dying patients. I've been called fragile, I told Judge Warren. I call it surviving. Margaret introduced my medical records voluntarily. Then Dr. Patel testified he had decades of records and 2 independent capacity evaluations. His conclusion was simple. Evelyn understood exactly what she owned and exactly what she wanted. Dana confirmed that I had never controlled Evelyn's medication, financial records, or legal paperwork. Then Ruth took the stand. She explained the porch light. It had been installed after I was thrown out. Every evening at 7, it turned on, rain, snow, holidays. Even the night Evelyn died. That light was for Clara, Ruth said. Everyone on our street knew it. Victor tried to suggest she had misremembered. Ruth looked over her glasses. Old women notice things, young man. It's what we do. The courtroom laughed. Then my mother lost control. We fed her for 18 years, she shouted. You don't get to walk away from a debt like that. Silence followed. There it was, the truth. Her entire philosophy in one sentence. Judge Warren called a recess. When she returned, she had her ruling, the petition to invalidate. Evelyn's trust was denied. There was no evidence of undue influence. The medical evidence supported Evelyn's capacity. The trust remained intact. Then came Article 9. The court found my parents had challenged the trust without probable cause. Their conditional inheritances were forfeited. They received nothing. Outside the courthouse, my mother approached me. After everything we gave you, I looked at her. Then consider us settled. I walked away into the cold November air. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like freedom. Evelyn hadn't left me $3.5 million. She had left me something worth more. A life where love didn't come with a ledger. And for the first time, I finally turned off the porch light myself. I didn't need it anymore. I had found my way home.